My name is Laura Wigglesworth, and I work with Callings.ai. I organize a lot of our webinars. We're going to talk more about Callings at the end, but basically, we're a complete platform for job seekers. So, we're going to help you figure out personal insights. What can you learn about yourself and the kind of job you want? How can you find those jobs and use AI to apply for them? And then Callings also offers the coaching and community. And that's what this element really is. It's about giving you practical tools for how to gain confidence and figure out where you belong next and find your next job. So today with me, we have Steve Jaffe. He is an author, an award-winning author and a podcaster. And some of you might have been on the call or the webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago when we talked about layoffs more generally. How do you move on from a layoff? And today we're focusing specifically on how do you talk about your layoff? So I just want to give you a little bit of background that, and to say that being laid off, I know it feels like the rug has been pulled out from under you because I was laid off at my last job. And it was at CARE, which is a global humanitarian and development organization. It's an $850 million dollar organization. We had offices in 90 countries, and I led all of the recruiting globally. And when I lost my job, I didn't just lose my income, I also lost my identity, my community, my confidence, and thanks to Doge, I lost my industry. So when interviewers started to ask me, why did you leave your last job? I had a few sort of pat and sarcastic answers in mind. Things like, well, apparently 25 years is not long enough, or I was collateral damage for, a funding apocalypse. And even though those things felt true, I realized after reading Steve's book, The Layoff Journey, that they wouldn't help me. They wouldn't help me get hired. So the layoff journey also made me realize that interviews are not therapy. They're not therapy conversations. And that if I answered from anger, I would just sound bitter. And if I answered from, defensively, I would sound guilty. And if I over explained myself, I would frankly sound a little bit unstable. So suddenly, then, if I did those things, the conversation wasn't going to be about me and what I could offer. It was going to be about my layoff. That's why I wanted to bring Steve on to talk more today. So joining me today is Steve Jaffe, the author of The Layoff Journey, and he's a regular guest on Callings webinars and on podcasts related to job hunting. And I've decided to divide today's webinar into 5 questions. And those questions are about layoffs more generally, and also about how they happen, why they happen. And then they will lead us to the dreaded question that all of you came to hear answers to today, which is, how do you answer the question, why did you leave your last job? So thank you for joining, Steve. If you can unmute your mic and introduce yourself, the things that I forgot to say, should have said, and then we'll get.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today and tuning in for this conversation. Um, I've been laid off 4 times over the course of my career. First layoff was in the first dot-com bubble that burst in 2001, and my last layoff was in 2023. The first layoff was really, really difficult for me. It took me a long time to recover. The last layoff, it was sort of like water off a duck's back. And as I was doing some self-examination to understand what was different and why I was processing it differently, I realized that I'd learned a set of skills. I had sort of clocked my 10,000 hours to become an expert in recovering from a layoff. And that was the genesis and impetus for the book. And, you know, having been on the job market all those different times after a layoff, I think I also learned how to kind of properly frame the experience in a way that doesn't give it any more oxygen and doesn't give it any more attention necessary in an interview type of a situation. So um, thanks, Laura, for having me, and looking forward to talking through some of these things.
Thank you, Steve. I see that Bill Lazar logged in, and I think he takes the cake at being laid off 8 times. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I hope that all these numbers that everybody's putting in here has made you realize that this is not about you. So one of the things that Steve says in his book is that it's not a character verdict that you
Mhm,
could win Employee of the Year in December and be laid off in January.
mhm.
So that leads me to my first question, Steve, which is, can you set the stage for how common layoffs are and why they occur?
Yeah, so a study that was taken in 2019, which is the most recent study from a like US nationwide study, was about 40% of all Americans had been laid off at least once. Now, that study obviously is about 7 years old, and there have been so many layoffs since then, whether it's from the coronavirus pandemic, Doge, all of the things that are happening now. That number, 40%, is certainly higher. But what it means is, one, you're not alone. There are plenty of people that are in this same situation. There are a lot of people that have gone through it. And Laura, what I really like about opening the webinar up with this open conversation on how many times you've been laid off is it's important to start taking away some of that stigma and some of that shame and embarrassment. When we talk about it and we are able to openly share, um, we find community, we find other people that have been through it. And that's how you find one support group, right? But also when you're in the job market, that hidden job market of networking and reaching out and talking to people is probably going to be the lowest hanging fruit in terms of being successful in landing your next job. So it's important to talk about it, one, just for the community and the network and the support, but also for the networking ability in the job hunt. So anyway, point being, layoffs have become so ubiquitous that any stigma that may have been held, I would say, is probably out the door right now,
Yeah,
especially in highly impacted industries, whether
yeah,
it's software, technology, marketing,
yep,
government jobs now, first time ever. But yeah,
yep.
yeah,
And 7% of layoffs have occurred from AI as well. So that's another reason. So the data that I found, Steve said 108,000 Americans were laid off in January.
yeah.
And
Highest number since 2009 in the
right,
month of
that's
January.
what I found.
And what's compounding that problem is the fewest number of new hires or new
Yep, yep,
jobs posted. So you're seeing more people laid off and the duration of being laid off lasting longer than it has in the past as
yep,
well.
yep. The second part of my question of why they occur, though, they're line item decisions. So they occur for
Right,
efficiency and that high performers are expensive and they're often
right.
almost more vulnerable because of that.
Yeah, the thing that everybody should keep in mind, and I'm sure everybody that's here today understands this, is that a layoff isn't indicative of anyone's performance. Like you mentioned, Laura, and I've seen this firsthand. The employee of the month in January gets laid off in July. Now, if you buy into the myth of meritocracy, you would wonder, well, this was a high performer. How could they possibly get let go? It's not about merit. It's about math. It's about mergers. It's a line item on a spreadsheet where somebody's trying to cut salaries to put that revenue to the bottom line because it's easier and quicker to do that than to go out and increase sales. So it's the result and reaction to the turbulent economic times that we find ourselves in, whether it's a dot-com bubble, a global pandemic, a recession, Doge cuts, whatever these
I,
outside market
yeah,
forces are,
yeah,
is what's impacting the labor market.
yeah. I see Michael says here he was rated number one. I imagine that's like the top of the scale. And then he was laid off 2 months later. So yeah,
Yeah,
proof that like you said, this is not merit, this is math. That's a good line.
right,
Yeah.
right, right.
So, okay, so that leads me to my second question, which I know people wonder about, which is, do hiring managers assume something negative when they hear that you were laid off?
Some may, and these are probably folks who may not have been laid off themselves, who probably have an antiquated understanding of the labor market and market conditions and their impact. Probably folks who don't come from industries that have been impacted, like I mentioned, software technology, marketing, other industries that tend to have like disproportionate numbers of reductions in force. But what I would say to that is if you come across a hiring manager that does seem to have some sort of a bias, that might be your own red flag about that company, perhaps. Interviews are two-way streets. You want to be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And if you get some sort of a weird vibe, like this person has something about being laid off, that might be, a sign saying it's not the right fit.
Yeah.
So, go
I
ahead,
know
Laura.
when we were preparing for this webinar and we were talking through some of the questions, I remember you said, well, they probably don't know you were laid off until you get to the interview. And then it's not a matter of what happened, but how do you respond to it? And you
Yeah,
said when you respond with emotional regulation and
right.
professional maturity, then you convey that this wasn't because you were incompetent, essentially. That
Yeah,
and you're going to give
yeah,
us that formula for how to respond. But
right,
um,
right. Layoffs, by and large, are no fault terminations.
yeah,
And if you get a vibe like there's some sort of a blame that might be being placed, you can always put that into your response that this was a no fault termination.
yeah,
And one of the things I mentioned in the book is it's really important um, in the layoff negotiation process with your severance that you get a letter that says you're eligible for rehire.
yeah,
And if you communicate that to the hiring manager that this was a no fault termination and you're eligible for rehire, whatever like red flag that they may have should dissipate. That should put them at ease because they understand, okay, this person's eligible for rehire, which means it was a no fault
yeah.
termination.
Especially if your boss is one of your references. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so another question that I have is over my own reaction to my layoff because I was feeling pretty resentful and um, we are we're told to be genuine and authentic, that that's what
Hmm.
employers want when we're
Hmm.
interviewing for a job and talking to people and networking. And yet you say we shouldn't be bitter and angry. It's unwise. Why is that?
Well, I think there's a time and a place to be bitter and angry. And absolutely, it's normal. And you should be bitter and angry. For example, like the person that was laid off 2 months after getting Employee of the Year, you absolutely are going to be bitter and angry. And there's a place for that. It's just not in the interview, right? One of the things I talk a lot about in the book, and is sort of the premise of the book, is there are stages of grief that you're going to go through after a layoff. It's really important that you do some of that work and you make your way through those stages of grief so that it doesn't manifest in the job interview. You want to spend some time with that anger and find a channel for it, find a healthy outlet. So that when it comes time and somebody does ask you, well, tell me why you left your last job or why were you laid off, you can come at it from a place of some level of like acceptance, right? And that acceptance takes time. But the point of the book is that it will help you navigate that so that you don't bring all of that baggage into the job interview. Um, there is an appropriate time and a place for those feelings. It's just not in the interview.
Yeah. I want to go to the chat because I think there were a couple good points raised. I'm looking a couple minutes ago when David Ketchum said that the potential company employer couldn't get over all his recent job changes. They were all legitimate. And
Mhm.
so I wonder if you've been laid off multiple times or had a number of short stints because of forces that you can't control. How do you handle that? I mean, what would you say to David?
Um, I would try and create an overall narrative. If, for example, if you're in an industry or a field or a category that tends to have a high turnover, you can create the thread that this is more of a category or an industry trend than something that's reflective of you and your performance. Um, if you can create like the idea of what those experiences all have in common. Maybe they were all budgetary, maybe they were all because of mergers or acquisitions or new leadership. The more that you can create like a single type of a narrative that will allow somebody to understand it and frame it in a way that doesn't place blame or point fingers, you can create more of a story around those circumstances that somebody will more easily understand. If you have 6 or 8 different plot points or trends, people are just looking for one overarching rationale, and the more that you can create that for them, the better.
Is it, I mean, one of the things that I was just thinking of for David, would it be disingenuous for David to call himself a consultant and then put all of those jobs underneath it?
I would probably not recommend that. I
Yeah.
would probably not. I would try and find, if you're in IT and there are budget things, if there are new advances that are causing reductions, you can say, listen, I happen to work in a field that it tends to be impacted by layoffs, which I have been. But I love the work that I do, and I feel like it brings me joy, and I want to continue to do it. You can kind of pivot from what could be perceived as a potential negative into a potential positive. So you're drawing the attention to why you want to stay in this line of work, why you enjoy it, in spite of the fact that it has caused, uh, layoffs in the past.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, we're going to go to the big question in your slides, and while I open up your slides, I'm just going to first lay it out there, which is the question that everybody tuned in for today. How do I explain being laid off? So how do I answer that dreaded question? Why did you leave your last job? And you set the stage for me when we were talking through this by saying what not to do before you gave the framework of what to do, which I remember you said no blaming, no name calling, no emotional adjectives, and
mhm.
don't over talk it. No
Right, right,
long explanations which
right,
make it seem like
right.
you're guilty. So I'm
Yeah.
going to open up your slides, but I'm hoping you can lay out the framework for how do we answer that question.
Right, right. So I created some slides here. The Q&A format is great for some conversational stuff, but I know that people want to take away some real concrete, like things that you can do and say in the interview. And I've put it down here, and this will be available. You'll have to tell me, Laura, if you'll do this as a leave behind, if you'll
We're happy
like
to do
email
a
it out.
follow up with people and send them the slides. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, okay,
Okay, so
great.
can you see my slides? Did I do it right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, great. Okay. So just to kind of set the stage, this is your opportunity in the interview to tell your story. Um, Creating a story about your background, your experience is the best way to communicate to that hiring manager what you bring to the table, the problem you solve. If you go back one, I'm sorry, you just advanced. Yeah. So the layoff doesn't define you, and you're not what happened to you. The business card is not your identity. And when you get laid off and that business card goes away, all of your years of experience and value does not go away with it. That's transferable skill set. If you were a vice president of marketing before you get laid off, you still have all of those skills and you'll be bringing them to that next job. And that's what you want to communicate. So framing it in a story that is forward looking, is positive, demonstrates value is what's really important to that hiring manager. That's what they want to see and hear. So get away from listing the qualifications. It's not so much about the qualifications per se as it is the story that will create the meaning and connection. The story is what demonstrates the value. Most importantly is it gives that interview a narrative that they can recall and retell,
Right.
and it sets you apart from all of those other folks that are interviewing for that job that are just quantifying what they can
Yes.
do, right?
So instead of
So
saying Steve, oh, Steve, he's the one who was laid off, it becomes Steve, he's the one who came up with this jingle that then doubled our revenue and it doubled revenue for his organization. Yeah.
right, exactly. And the way you connect, you create that connection and demonstrate the value is through this type of like storytelling about who you are, what's important to you. And it's all of that positioning is where you want to double down. And the layoff is something that you just can try and gloss over as much as you can. So the thing, a really great interview tactic, some folks may have seen this, is the STAR method. You set the scene with the situation. The task is your responsibility in that situation, the action that you took, and the result. What's really important, I'm going to tell you from my own experience, um, in the workforce, you get used to talking about we. Like if you talk about I did this, people tend to think maybe you're not a team player or you're taking credit for work that wasn't yours. And in the interview is the time to talk about I did this, I did this. They don't want to talk about the team and like the collective. It's all about what you did. So this is the time to like be proud of yourself and take ownership. Um, um, Results absolutely should be measurable. You want to give measurable results. This is when you quantify what you did. So always attach an outcome that was, whether it was like revenue related, sales related,
Let's see.
something that quantifies what it did for the bottom line. And this is the framework that establishes your credibility.
Okay.
So this is, if you want to take a screen grab, if you want to like take a snapshot, this would be how you would verbalize the STAR method during the interview. So you explain the situation really briefly. Company lost a major client. What I did, I was tasked with stabilizing revenue. And then the action that I took, I led a cross-functional team. The result. This is, you end on the result. This is the memorable kind of outcome. Generated 1.2 million in business within 90 days. That's, somebody's going to leave with that. Oh, okay, this guy or woman generated 1.2 at the bottom line in 90 days. Great. That goes down in their notes, and that is the memorable thing that they will remember you for, right? Um, so the question, why did you leave your last job? Why were you laid off? This isn't um, anything other than a risk calculation. And the same question goes to, well, I see you've had 6 jobs in the last 2 years. What they're trying to do is manage their own risk. And if you can give them a response that says, look, I love this line of work. I love what I do. I've loved the companies I've worked for. Unfortunately, they each had set of circumstances that resulted in layoffs. They were no fault of my own, but I'm dedicated to this field. You minimize the risk, and you take it away from anything that could be perceived as being like personal. So important thing. Um, the signal that you send is the story they hear, right?
The
You give
signal
a
meaning your tone and the
your
how you respond.
Your
as much as
tone, your
what you're saying.
body
Okay.
language, every verbal and nonverbal piece of communication is what they're reading, right? And you may be carrying that anger, that
Mhm,
resentment, you may
mhm,
be
mhm.
carrying that, but you want to do your best to leave that behind. And in this instance, portray, if it's not genuine, that you are okay with the situation, right? So neutral explanation, a brief reflection, but the most important thing is the forward pivot.
Why you're
So
drawn to this job in this organization. Okay.
right. So my role was eliminated. It was a part of a broad budget reduction, and if you can say it real matter of factly, it was an economic decision tied to company-wide adjustments. It was not performance related. But, and this is where you forward pivot, real upbeat, it gave me the opportunity to reassess what I want to do, what to focus on next. And that's why I'm really excited about roles like this one. And you bring it back to the interview, the job, and that's where you come out real positive and upbeat.
Excellent. So there's three parts to it. A neutral explanation. I was laid off as a part of restructuring. A
Yep.
brief reflection or what you did. That gave me the opportunity to hone my knowledge and skills in AI or whatever.
Right.
And then
Right.
forward to the job. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm excited about this job in this organization. Three parts.
Right.
I'm
Right.
I'm going to have us practice that in the chat. I don't know if you want to go over either of these.
Wait, no, go back. Yeah, this one here,
Okay.
just to double down on the forward pivot.
Mhm.
So you can really lean into this forward pivot with saying, the experience reinforced. Or the second paragraph here is also a great response when somebody asks you, like, what's your strength? What's your superpower? This is a great thing to mention as as a result of these layoffs, as these interruptions in my career. It gave me an opportunity to learn a growth mindset,
Mhm.
so that you come out of it with finding the positive.
Mhm.
um, all of this, it's only a big deal if you make it a big deal.
Uh-huh.
The
Uh-huh.
more that you minimize it and turn it into a no big thing, then it's like the elephant in the room. Like if you mention there's an elephant in the room, everybody's going to look at the elephant in the room.
Mhm.
Move on, minimize it. Don't give it any more oxygen than necessary. And all of these things, like forwarding to something that is positive,
Mhm.
will give the interviewer a positive frame of mind about you.
I think I would acknowledge an elephant, and I think I would say, "Wow, I see an elephant in the room. That's pretty cool." And then I would say, along with the elephant, there's this kangaroo that I really want to bring to this organization. But I wouldn't ignore the elephant. Yeah. I see your point though, is we don't want to ignore it. We want to acknowledge that yes, we were laid off and be forthcoming about it, but we don't want to dwell on it. We don't
Right.
want to get bogged
No,
down on it. And we
no,
certainly don't want to call the organization, the company, bad words.
no.
And I will say from my industry, there's a lot of people on this call today who are from global health and development, the international space. And there, believe me, there's a lot to go into there
Yeah,
with Doge. But
yeah.
the time and place to do that is not the interview. It's
No,
our support groups and the bars that we frequent. So,
exactly, exactly. Yeah,
okay, I do
yeah,
want to get to
yeah.
questions, but let me see, was
Okay.
there something else you were going to add about this slide?
Yeah, there's just a couple of questions that tend to come up. So tell me about yourself. This is how you want to frame the tell me about yourself question. Everything that you're saying, every word should be demonstrating value. I solve X for Y by Z, which leads to my value proposition. If you frame this in one sentence, this is what becomes memorable. This is how they're able to retell and remember you.
Mhm.
Oh, this is the person, they solve this for, and if you can make this like a one-to-one comparison to the job that you're interviewing for, more and more nowadays, people want to see that you've done kind of exactly what's in the job description. So, if your statement about yourself can draw back to what you've done that's specific to the job that you're interviewing for in a really succinct way, all the better.
Great. I am going to demonstrate when I show the Callings tools how the questionnaire in Callings can help you come up with this statement.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay.
Let's,
Oh, wait,
oh,
no, you
sorry,
skipped one.
sorry.
Okay. Um, this is quality versus quantity. You don't want to show everything you know. You want to show how you solve their problems. So relevance is most important. If it doesn't serve the role, if it's not listed in the job description, don't talk about it. If you've
Sort of like
done
your resume.
something,
Yeah.
this everything should be like a one-to-one. The like ATS systems, recruiters, hiring managers, it's all about alignment.
Mhm.
And to show the cleanest and clearest amount of alignment, everything that you talk about should be something that's listed in the job description somewhere.
Sort of
Um,
like your resume. Doesn't have to be
yeah,
40 pages. Yeah.
yeah. Aim for that. The TLDR, too long, didn't read. People's attention span is short these days.
Yeah.
Give them summary, give them bullet points, give them sound bites.
This was one of the
Um,
questions that we've had asked in the past webinar, Steve, was I've got gaps in my employment. How do I address this?
yep, yep. You want to be confident. You want to be purposeful. You do not want to apologize. You want to be positive. So this is a great example of how you can talk about those gaps. Um, you want to show that you've been busy, you've been doing something, whether you've done consulting projects or not. Create something here that shows you've been creating value for yourself and others. If you've been interviewing for 9 months, and maybe that's all you've been doing, that's okay. But for the interview purposes, create a narrative that says, you've been keeping your skills active, you've been refining your skills, you've been learning transferable skills, you've been upskilling. Show something that says, listen, I'm not desperate. This job, if it's a right fit, great. If not, I have all these other things going. Even if you are desperate, which I've been out of work one time for 18 months.
Mhm.
Um, you you don't want to create that energy in the interview. So you
That's
want to
great.
show that you've got stuff going on.
Yeah, so what you're looking for here is not I've applied to 84 jobs in 5 months, but
No,
I've
no.
spent the last 8 months learning new tools when it comes to whatever, marketing,
Yeah,
attending
yeah.
podcasts or listening to podcasts and attending webinars to hone my knowledge of this something related to the job. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
and if anything, I would minimize the number of jobs that I'm communicating that
Yeah.
I'm interviewing for. I would tell somebody, you know what, I've been really selective. So
Mhm.
I've only applied for maybe a dozen jobs
Mhm.
because I'm really being selective that I don't want to get laid off again, whatever it is. Um, this is your story. You can create your narrative, and you own this outcome. The outcome that hiring manager leaves this interview with about you and your story is crafted entirely by you.
Mhm.
So use it as an opportunity. You do not want to defend your past. You want to define your value. Shift your mindset from explanation to storytelling, and move from what happened in the past to a forward-looking statement about what you solve, the value you bring, the problems you solve, why you're excited about the opportunity, why you think it's a perfect fit, why you think your skill set is perfectly matched. All of those things you want to iterate.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is to use one of your metaphors that you drew on in your book. It is important to address what happened. So to look in the rearview mirror, you said if you're in a car, but it's more important to look through the windshield and talk about where you're going and how you can help the company and organization. So that's a really
right.
good point.
Yeah,
Um,
and the analogy is the rearview mirror is much, much smaller than the windshield. And whether you're dealing with the grief or you're communicating the experience, the look backward should always be much smaller than the look forward.
Yeah, yeah. So so some of the main points here that I just want to reiterate for people, and then we'll go to some of the Q&A and I'll give you a demo of Callings. But your layoff is not your identity. So it's one
Right.
chapter, it's not the book.
Yep.
Um, don't spend too much time defending your past. You're there to define your value.
Hmm.
And a layoff is an economic event. It's not a verdict on you and your competence and performance. And then
Hmm.
last point, you said focusing on the future, the value you bring to the company, the problems that you can solve. So not so
Right.
much on, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Don't be defensive.
Don't be defensive.
And some of those questions are just risk assessment questions, and
Mhm,
they're sometimes pretty innocent, right?
mhm.
And just minimize. Don't give it more oxygen than it needs.
Yeah. I think there is a tendency to feel cross-examined because you're feeling a
Hmm.
little insecure from being laid off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I could see how if somebody said to you, well, why were you laid off? Like
Right.
only the most incompetent people get laid off. Like to read into that, and maybe that's not what they're asking. Maybe they're just
Exactly.
asking, oh, why did you get
Exactly.
laid off? And you say,
Right.
well, Elon Musk came and eliminated USAID and 300,000 of us were laid off. I was like, I mean, that's the truth of my story. But I mean, other people's stories might be, half my department was laid off. It was an efficiency move,
Right.
very
Right.
matter of fact, and then pivot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two, so same outcome, two very different kind of answers that you just gave, but very different tonality to them, right? Very much like, if you're communicating, look, I understand business and I understand that like the business climate and there were a reduction in force because of a merger and acquisition, whatever. Like that says a really neutral, but it also says this person is very professional, they're experienced, they understand the business world, you're not carrying resentment or blame. Like those are all great signals to send a hiring manager.
Yep. Before we go to the demo of callings, I want to go through some of these Q&A raised. So I'm not going all the way back. I just paged up a little bit. And I see from Ed, he said, some of my short stints are explainable and yet there are threads that seem to come across as excuses, at least to
Mm,
you. Ed,
mhm,
why don't you get a neutral point of view about that and either ask somebody a caring person, or paste it into ChatGPT and say,
mhm.
do these come across as defense excuses? How can I explain my layoffs without seeming defensive? And you might get some
Yeah,
different answers there.
yeah, yeah,
Let's see, a lot of people asking where to buy the book. So maybe can you put in
yeah,
the
yeah.
link, Steve?
Sure.
I
Yeah.
said go on Amazon. That was my short answer, but if you could put the link, that would help.
You can, if there's some people who have some biases against Amazon,
Oh,
anywhere you
okay.
buy
Okay.
books, you
Well,
can
anywhere
order
you
it
can.
from, but I will drop the link in for Amazon. And
Okay.
thank you everybody for showing interest in the book. I appreciate it.
Much of my career has been a team orientation. So some people say we should say we. I agree with that. I think it's nice to have a combination of I and we. I think it's very Western focused to be saying, I did this, I did that. And in my line of work in global health and development, we were skeptical of people who said I too much. We looked for a balance. How did you involve other people in that? How did you get other people to buy into your ideas? So I think it's nice to have a balance. But yeah, I see Steve's point too, that they're looking to understand your achievements.
Right.
So when people ask me, what is your biggest achievement? I say, well, I cut time to fill by 42%.
Right.
But my
Right.
team did it with me, and here's how
Yeah.
we did it together. So I own
Yeah.
the accomplishment, but I brought other people along with me, and they're the reason I was able to accomplish it.
And I think the difference is like if you're an individual contributor and you're in the weeds doing this stuff, you want to talk about I. If you are like a manager or director and your primary day to day is leading people and managing people, it's a different type of a thing, but you still want to focus on what you achieved in terms of leading that group. So in my supervision of my team, I was able to create, whatever value, whatever revenue, whatever metrics that the team was able to then buy into because of my leadership skills.
Yeah. I want to point out something here that Claire Farrell wrote. She said, how can you switch the narrative from when you're in a toxic company? And one person, Michael, said in response, you can talk about resilience, the resilience it brought me. So that's a good idea, how to make it more positive. Yeah. Somebody said they would like access to the presentation, and I'll see if we can do that, if we can attach it as a PDF. And if not, I'm going to put my email address in the chat and people can write to me directly and I'll send it to them or to Steve.
Hmm.
Okay, I think that we are about to go to my Steve, can you continue paging through there? And if there's other things, maybe just answer the question
Yeah,
either on the
yeah,
chat
definitely.
or out loud. I'm sorry we
Yeah.
can't give people access to the microphone, but we had problems the last time we did this together. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you some tools at Callings that can help you with a bunch of the things that Steve laid out. So, how do you sum up the value that you can provide, for instance? I'm going to share my screen. Oops. Okay. And now I'm going to go to Callings. Can everybody see my screen with the Callings spreadsheet with my jobs? Am I doing it right? I guess, Steve, you have to give me the yes or no because other people can't show
Oh,
the audio.
yes, I can
Yeah,
see your
okay.
screen.
Okay,
Yep.
what I'm going to show you about Callings, I see a couple people with their hands raised, and I'm going to ask you to write your questions in the chat because I can't unmute just one person. I have to unmute everybody, and we had a problem with somebody taking controls away from us last time. So write your question in the chat, and if Steve can't answer it now while I'm going through the Callings tools, then I'll save some time at the end, and then everybody can come off. I'll take everybody off mute so we can have a discussion. But I do want to go through these tools. So Callings is a platform for job seekers, and it helps you with three things. So one is insight about yourself. How through AI tools can you learn better about where your strengths are, what your accomplishments are, what kind of job is right for you, what if you're making a pivot, what kind of industries are growing that you might belong in, and the companies within them that are hiring. And then two, how do you find out about jobs? And how do you use AI to apply for them? And then three, how do you get the wraparound services that help you with your job search? So that would be the coaching and the community. How do you connect with other people? And then coaching is things like this, is webinars that give you specific tools and advice on how to do things like handle that question, why did you leave your last job? So those are the three things that Callings does for you. And I'm going to start by showing you the My Insights tool. So when you sign up, I'll put this in the chat as well, how you can sign up to get a free start in Callings to learn the tools and get started. But on My Insights, it all starts with a questionnaire about you. And the reason why I'm not going to share the questionnaire is because it's AI generated and it's different for everybody. But you can see here on my questionnaire, there were 28 questions. Once I answered those questions, Callings gave me a series of reports to understand my goals, my ideal job, my whole brand. How do I sum myself up? And so I want to show you the ideal job, the brand, and the market fit, because those are most relevant for this webinar. So my brand elements that it gave me is a 20-second pitch. So Steve said it's nice to be able to sum up what it is you want. He called it telling your story quickly. In 20 seconds, I help growing health
Hmm.
technology companies hire great people. In
Yep.
two minutes, what do I do? Well, I'm a senior talent acquisition leader with 20 years experience in global health recruiting. And here's what I've done. There's a summary. It gives you things like your skills. So there's now more of a push to understand what kind of marketable skills you have. And then from there, how else can you pivot into what the growing industries and job types are? And you have to know your skills to be able to do that. Achievements are more about things to talk about in interviews. And also, they're a way to understand our skills because we tend to excel and have the skills to do what we achieve. So it's sort of another circuitous way to understand what we're good at and what we like doing. Okay, so that's the brand on my insights. It also gives me my dream job description. This is just a whole nother way, a more creative way of thinking about what it is I want to do. Through this, after answering these questions, it came up with Chief of Talent Acquisition at Global Health Innovators. It even made up a company. And I have to say, when I was working with another career AI platform, I was checking out all the competitors and I found my way to Callings and I did this exercise and then it generated this job. And I went, oh my God, this is the perfect job for me. And I went looking for a good 5 or 10 minutes to see how do I apply for this job? And I realized, oh, at the very top, it says a fictitious job posting. So this job doesn't really exist. Why do we bother doing it? Because it's another way for you to look at what is it you want to spend your time doing. So the responsibilities here should match what it is you want to do. So for me, I want to do training. I want to do DEI work. I want to discover AI tools that can make recruiting more efficient and effective. And I want to lead. So this is just a creative way to better understand what it is that you want to do is your ideal job description. And then the third thing I wanted to show you, this is brand new, and I'm so excited to finally be able to demo it because for those of us who come from a Doge impacted industry, this My Insights tool in targeting new sectors and companies, this market fit report is pretty cool. The first thing it came up for me, global health and international development companies, they're not really hiring. So in some ways, this was not as relevant as it could have been. But then the second and third, life sciences companies, federal contracting and public sector consulting agencies, it came up with a couple that I wasn't that familiar with. And then health technology companies that I wasn't familiar with. So this one was intriguing to me, IQVIA. It's in the Raleigh-Durham area, and I knew that there were people here. I had seen this on people's resume, and I didn't really know what it was, and they came from another organization I had worked with, FHI 360. So I thought it was interesting that it created it for me. Anyway, you can learn, you can get some idea of where you might want to target your efforts if you're pivoting through these kinds of tools. And you can click on and understand the company reports, how do people rate the company, what do they like about it, as well as get information on, things they have published and whatnot. I know that Callings is sort of like an Apple Watch, right? Like I have an Apple Watch. I use it for three things. I track my steps. I know how much activity that I've done for the day, and I look at the time. I don't expect you to use everything in Callings. That's why I'm not going to go into every cool tool that there is. There's a lot on Callings that you might not use. So creating a speculative role, I'm going to skip over that for now. And I'm going to go back to what I said before, which is purpose number one is to understand yourself. So what are your skills? What are your accomplishments? What do you like to do? What is the right kind of job for you? That's the first purpose of Callings. What's the second purpose? It's to help you actually find jobs. So you'll see on Callings a job tracker, which helps you keep organized, right? And on here are some jobs that I've gotten and applied for or thought about applying for recently. You're going to get, when you sign up for a Callings account, I think twice a week, you're going to get new jobs sent to you via email to remind you to go into your tracker and add things, or you can do it from the email. I like to do it from the platform of Callings. And so I go under this tool here of find matching jobs, and it connects me with live jobs. These are not things that came from like LinkedIn and Indeed. Oftentimes those jobs don't even exist because the employers don't take them down. And on the case of Indeed, they get paid when there's more clicks, so they have an incentive to keep the jobs up there. Most of our jobs come directly from the websites. So we know that there's a job available when they appear on your platform. Anyway, you can add these jobs to your tracker with the push of a button. You can review them and hit add to tracker, or you can say, you know what, that's not quite right. Don't show me that again, right? You can also edit your preferences and put in what kind of a job do you want in plain English. And you can decide, oh, you want it to be 30 miles within Washington, D.C., or you want it to be remote. Under filters, you can also choose things like you want to include temporary jobs and contract jobs, things like that. But main point is that the second function of Callings is to actually send you jobs. And then you can use AI to help apply for those jobs. So here's a job, for instance, I applied for just last week. I went under evaluate. So I learned about the organization through this report and how I match with the job right here. Where do I fall short? Here's my fit breakdown. And then I used the tools in Callings to actually draft a resume and cover letter. We do not recommend that you just download these and use them. AI can hallucinate, but it's also got to be you and has to be genuine and authentic. So I tend to use this to go in here and make changes. You can make changes right here in the resume, and then you can save it. We're going to continue later and download it and apply that way. Another tool that we have in Callings is to use AI to help you build your network. So this is a real differentiator of Callings versus other tools that are out there, is that we find people who are connected to this very job. So in this case, 1, 2, 3, there are these 4 or 5 people that are connected to this job at the Pew Charitable Trusts. And Emily is one of them. And let's say I want to read about Emily. I can see how her background compares to mine. And then I can contact her if I want through Open Draft. And it will give me, this is a real game changer, everybody. And it gives me her email address. Not even LinkedIn gives you this for people that you're not first degree connections with. So you can cut and paste Emily's, or if you hit Open Draft, it goes directly into your email. A suggested email for Emily. You can also use this AI feature here to experiment and say, you know what? Emily and I were both at the same conference, the SHRM conference. And I want to incorporate that into my email to Emily. And you hit that in AI and it will change the suggested email for Emily. Hope it doesn't take too long. You can translate it into French. You can make lots of changes this way. You can say to AI, help me figure out if Emily is a bicycle commuter like I am. Help me figure out if there's any evidence that Emily is a runner or does triathlons or rows on the Potomac River or whatever it is that you want to see. What do you and Emily have in common, right? This is taking a while, so I'm not going to wait for it, but it will incorporate it into the email here. Okay. So I showed you how you can network with the help of AI tools. I showed you how, I showed you a little bit about how it will tailor a resume and cover letter for you, and you can use that to apply. The third and final thing that Callings helps you with is to get connected. And what I realized in my year since being doged is that in order to find our next move, we all need support and we need coaching. So we need problem solving with the kinds of things like this webinar hopefully helps you do, and we need connection to other people. And so as best as we can, Callings does that too. And through here, you can see on the toolbar, you can have access to all of our webinars here under the coaching part. You can come in and you will get, once you sign up for Callings, you'll get an email. We usually do a webinar every other week. So we usually do 2 a month, and you're going to get invited to those. And then once a week, there's a community circle where we talk about very specific parts of the Callings tools and problems that people are having. When they get larger, we do breakout groups, but otherwise they're just full group discussions. So I know that was a lot and I talked fast, but hopefully you came away with the 3 things that Callings can help you do. And I'm going to put in the chat how you can sign up to get started with a free account with Callings. But I want to save the last like 6 or 7 minutes to go through some of the questions people had and answer them. And I saw some hands raised, and I can't really unmute and have people share their videos because of our past, we had a problem with that. So, but I'm going to go through the chat right now. And if people have questions, or if you've seen questions you want to address, Steve, let's spend the last 5 or 7 minutes or so answering people's questions. And I'm going to paste in a link for Callings too.
Yeah, there was one question about someone who was on sabbatical for some medical leave and was asking if that's a suitable answer. And absolutely, 100%. People have parents, people have kids. Being out of work for a period of time to take care of a loved one is there shouldn't be any red flags on that. So absolutely.
I see Michael asked about target companies, and I'm going to open up my screen again, and then I'll show you what that does since he asked. But you can keep talking, Steve, while I do that.
Um, I
So,
think
I was
I
just going
was
to say, target companies are the companies that the system came up with when it looked at the three growing industries that match your skills and interests. And so for me, I had shown you IQVIA, but here's another digital health company that it came up for me. So I can read about this and see, is this the kind of company that I might want to work for? And if it is, and I mentioned to you, I didn't want to overwhelm you with every tool that Callings had, but this is like mind-blowing, revolutionary. So I will show you a quick glimpse of this, which is it will come up with a speculative role, which is like we all talk about the gig economy and how we have to be solving problems for organizations. And that's our way to sort of work our way into an organization or a company. And that's one of the things that Callings does is it will analyze this organization, Amwell, and it will analyze my experience and my skills. And then it will come up with a suggested gig or role for how I could consider helping this company. So in that way, it's almost like Salesforce in identifying problems and solutions that I could provide. It does take a minute, so maybe you can keep talking, Steve, and I'll show it when it comes up.
Yeah, Laura, Sandra had a good question about, I think, a past webinar that you just did about ageism in the job hunt. And do you have like a sound bite or something that you can advise on how to navigate ageism in the hiring process?
I guess I would need to know more specifically what she's wondering, but I think the overarching point of the presenter was that it's good that there are going to be assumptions and that there's creative ways to address them before and not like you said the elephant in the room, Steve, not
Yeah,
ignoring. So
yeah,
by saying you might be thinking that I'm too old to be up on technology. But I've
yeah,
actually spent the last 6 months honing my knowledge and skills on AI. And I was hoping I could show you two of the coolest tools that I think have been invented that can
mm,
revolutionize, really turn around the whole industry of recruiting.
yeah,
So, generative AI, just one quick example. And so then
yeah,
you're moving it from I'm old to I'm in the know and I have value that I can provide to you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
I think
she can also watch the whole webinar on the coaching platform.
okay. Okay. I would also just add to try and reduce anything that might date you on your resume. So take out the date you graduated college. Only show like your resume these days. You only need a resume that's maybe going back 15, 20 years at the very most, you know? Um, Try and for the job interview, like, wear something that's like for example, one time someone showed up for a job and he was wearing like a tweed coat. A tweed jacket sort of dates you
Did
a
he have
little
a
bit,
pipe?
um, so those are some simple things, but yeah, go back and check out the webinar.
Yeah, and I remember
And
she said don't have an AOL.com email address.
yeah, right. Yeah, those are things for sure. Um, Sonia is asking about accessibility built into the Callings platform. Are there accessibility things for like visually impaired?
Can she send me a note about that and I will ask Philippe. But I guess I need to know more what kind of tools or accessibility she's referring to. This is an example. I don't know if you can see my screen again, but it took me a minute to have this come up. But this company, Amwell, I actually haven't researched it. I don't know it, but it's one of the companies that the system said I might be interested in. So it's a growing company in my area of interest, a health technology company. And so when I clicked, give me a speculative role, it came up with a gig job, a consultancy
Okay.
that I might want to consider. So if I network with people and I find myself identifying a problem, this may be, here's how I could solve this, right? So the system is predicting that this is the kind of job that they would need to post or consulting gig.
Okay. Um, so there are folks that are asking for the presentation. Um, and then how would Sonia follow up with you about the
If she could send
accessibility?
me, so I'm putting my email address again in the chat, and if people could send me a note, that's my best way to follow up with people because that's sort of like my to-do list, and I'll respond.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and then
Feel free to
so
stay
Car
on because we want to answer all the questions, but I know we're at time. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Okay. No, that's good. So Carl is saying that he was at a job for 24 years and that it's hard for him to only include like a limited time. That's okay. Going back, if you've had one job for 24 years, that's not a bad thing. That shows like stability and longevity, loyalty. And, given all the sort of the balance of in demonstrating value, those are really good things to demonstrate. If somebody was looking at somebody who had a job at one place for 24 years versus somebody who went from job to job every 2 years, they'd probably prefer somebody at 24 years. So
Hopefully there's a few different titles the person's had to show that they've progressed,
yeah.
promotions within.
Is so somebody's looking for clarification. Is your email Laura at Callings AI or Laura
Oh,
at
shoot.
Calling AI?
Callings. Sorry.
Collins. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. There you go. Collins. Good.
Thanks.
Um, I think we've answered most of the questions. Are there any questions that we haven't answered that anyone would like to address? You can type it in the chat. Um, yes.
The
Longevity.
link for the free account. So people can go up to Callings and sign up for your account. And there are some tools on the website, like the job listings, that people will always get, even if they don't have a paid account. But once you try out Callings and your free trial expires, then you'll be asked to subscribe.
Yeah, I love the match rate that you showed, Laura, and I would just kind of double down on trying to find the highest match rate possible. So if like you're seeing match rates around 85%, do what you can to revise your resume so you can get to like 95% match rate. Because that's what when the ATS and the HR and all those people are screening, they're screening based on those match rates. And they may not even ever read the resume. They may just say drop everybody below 95%
Good point.
thresholds.
That's a good point.
So try and customize your resume so that in the Callings platform, before you send it, you're seeing the highest match rate you could possibly get.
That's a good point. So we're at time, and I'm going to say, Steve and we can hang around and answer questions, but I really thank you, everybody. Thank you for being honest and upfront
Mhm.
about getting laid off. It's not, hopefully through this webinar, you learn that it's not a mark of shame, that it's very common and that it's
Yeah.
not about you.